The death of gender preference in Oklahoma child custody. Gender preference in child custody means that both mothers and fathers are treated the same as it relates to child custody. For decades, many parents believed that young children automatically belonged with their mothers in custody disputes. This belief was rooted in what was historically known as the tender years doctrine, a judicial preference suggesting that very young children should be placed with their mothers whenever possible. That doctrine is no longer the law in Oklahoma. In modern Tulsa custody courts, gender preference has officially given way to a neutral, fact-driven analysis centered on the child's best interests. What was the tender years doctrine? The tender years doctrine was a legal principle once applied in many states that presumed mothers were naturally better suited to care for young children. Courts often favored maternal custody, particularly when children were infants or toddlers. Over time, constitutional concerns and evolving social norms led to its rejection. Oklahoma law now requires courts to decide custody without regard to the parent's gender. Today, custody determinations must be gender neutral. What the law actually requires. Oklahoma custody decisions are governed by the best interests of the child standard under Title 43. Judges are prohibited from awarding custody based on a parent's sex. Instead, courts evaluate parental fitness and the child's welfare through a series of practical considerations, including stability, involvement, cooperation, and caregiving history. There is no legal presumption in favor of mothers. The real focus: the day-to-day caregiver. In Tulsa courts, one of the most influential factors in custody decisions is who has historically served as the child's primary, day-to-day caregiver. Judges often look at questions such as who handled school enrollment and homework, who attended medical appointments, who managed daily routines, meals, and bedtime, and who arranged childcare and extracurricular activities. The analysis centers on continuity and stability, not gender. If the father has been the primary caregiver, courts will recognize that reality. If caregiving was shared, courts evaluate how best to maintain consistency. Why the myth persists. Despite statutory neutrality, many fathers still assume they are at a disadvantage. This perception often stems from older case law, cultural expectations, or outdated advice. In reality, Oklahoma courts have moved decisively away from gender-based assumptions. Modern judges are trained to evaluate evidence, not stereotypes. The parent who demonstrates consistent involvement, reliability, and a child-focused approach is often viewed favorably, regardless of gender. Shared parenting and joint custody. Oklahoma law also expresses a preference for meaningful involvement by both parents whenever appropriate. Joint custody arrangements are common when parents can cooperate effectively. However, even in joint custody cases, courts still examine which parent has provided the majority of day-to-day care when determining physical custody schedules. Again, the focus is practical, not biological. What fathers and mothers should understand. Custody cases are won or lost on evidence of parenting, not gender identity. Courts consider historical caregiving roles, emotional bonds, ability to foster the child's relationship with the other parent, and stability and consistency. A parent who attempts to rely on outdated assumptions, either expecting automatic preference or claiming bias without evidence, may misjudge how modern courts operate. Preparation matters more than perception. The modern reality in Tulsa courts. Tulsa judges increasingly emphasize documentation and demonstrated parenting patterns. Calendars, school records, medical logs, and testimony from teachers or caregivers often carry more weight than generalized claims about parental roles. In many cases, fathers are awarded primary custody when the evidence shows they have been the child's primary source of daily stability. The tender years doctrine is not merely weakened, it is legally obsolete. Child custody attorneys in Oklahoma. The death of gender preference in Oklahoma child custody is finally here. The idea that young children automatically belong with their mothers or their fathers is a myth in modern Oklahoma law. Tulsa courts no longer apply the tender years doctrine and are prohibited from making custody decisions based on gender. Instead, custody decisions are evidence-driven, not stereotype-driven. For a free and meaningful consultation with a child custody attorney at Kania Law Office, call 918-743-2233.